Hey YouTube, it's Jamie. I'm smoking in my car. I'm smoking some luxury twist flake that I had stoved a little bit in the oven. And I'm smoking it in my Peterson Aaron bent calabash. I'll show you the tobacco. Can you see that? Sorry. Oh, these shakes, man. Yeah, it's really good. Here, hold on. There you go. Yeah. My left hand is less shaky than my right hand. Anyway, I was inspired to make a quick little video. I just pulled into my driveway and I've been listening to Monk's Dream, Thelonious Monk's first Capitol record. I know that's backwards for you, but really great record. Thelonious Monk, piano player, early bebop piano player from the 40s, like Minton's Playhouse, and you know, in the same milieu as Charlie Parker, Miles Davis, Hank Jones, Bud Powell, another piano player that was kind of on that scene at the time, Herbie Nichols, another piano player. They were like the big three, I think, or maybe four if you include Hank Jones. So early bebop piano players, basically the architects of the style on that instrument. Monk was, you know, the big one. He's very idiosyncratic. You know, he's his technique is kind of, a lot of people had criticized him negatively because of his technique seems underdeveloped or clunky, maybe. But I think that's just his voice on the instrument. I mean, he's humorous, you know. His use of rhythm is just funny. He was somehow able to capture things that are just like read as being hilarious. You know, I find myself laughing to some of his note choices, some of his extensions on chords, you know, just a funny intervallic relationship. You know, his almost constant use of the whole tone scale, which is whole step, whole step, whole step, whole step, whole step, till you divide up the octave. Kind of has this floating, ethereal sound to it. In fact, it's the sort of scale that's used, you know, when you watch old movies and somebody has a dream, you know, and they do that, like the screen gets blurry, and then usually a vibraphone does the whole tone scale, and that kind of evokes this dreamlike quality. And Monk really exploits that in a good way, you know, in his work. There's some great tunes on here. Like I said, it's his first Capitol record. And, sorry, Columbia, not Capitol, Columbia. It's his first Columbia record. Yeah, Monk's Dream. He does Body and Soul, a nice unaccompanied solo rendition of Body and Soul, the old standard, you know. Bright Mississippi, Blues, five spot, Just a Gigolo, the old standard. Some tunes you probably know. And then his tunes are, of course, very recognizable. You always know it's him. And I think that's the mark of a really developed composer and instrumentalist, is that you hear them and you know instantly it's them. You know, like Monk is that in spades. He is definitely has his own signature approach to the piano and his own melodic voice that is unlike anybody else. His own harmonic voice, you know, like I said, this kind of augmented fifth feel on everything, or, you know, a lot. He's using that augmented sort of whole tone tonality as like where a lot of people would use, you know, just a dominant 7th chord. He kind of subs those out, as you would say in the vernacular, for these whole tone kind of passages. Just really interesting stuff. And and on this record there's Charlie Rouse, who is definitely my favorite tenor saxophonist who's played with Monk. Monk had several tenor saxophonists, Johnny Griffith, other ones, but Charlie Rouse with Monk is just like, that's such a perfect match, those two. It's just really great listening. It's really great music. It's his first Columbia record called Monk's Dream, and really just great crisp recording, you know. And I think John Orr plays bass, and Frankie Dunlop, I think, is the drummer. But it's a very good date, you know. If you get the CD, there's bonus tracks on it, just alternate takes of tunes that are already on that date. What else could I say about Monk? You know, again, he comes from that early set of, you know, first generation bebop musicians in Harlem. He carries a bit of this like stride approach, which is an older sort of form of jazz. You know, it's called stride piano, in that the left hand is playing bass note chord, bass note chord, bass note chord, while the right hand is doing the melodic stuff on top. So boom bap, boom bap, boom bap. He's back and forth hitting a bass note and a chord, so it has this like almost kind of marchy feel, I guess. You know, a very, very defined and purposeful rhythmic approach. So there's some of that in his playing, but bebop, of course, eschews a lot of that, the older forms, you know. But he still has remnants or vestiges of his stride background. Yeah, I mean, if you've heard of jazz at all, chances are you've heard of, you know, Charlie Parker, John Coltrane, Miles Davis, and Thelonious Monk, this piano player, Thelonious Monk. There's actually some great footage of him, too, playing live. One thing I loved about Monk was that when he heard the, let's say, tenor saxophonist doing something very special, instead of sitting there at his piano and doing chord comping, you know, like comping or accompanying the tenor saxophonist, he would totally get out of the way. He would literally step away from his piano and like dance around. And that's what I mean by this, like, this use of space. Like, he realized he had the prescience, sort of, or the sort of insight to just be like, okay, this guy's doing a great job, and he doesn't need me hemming him in with chord changes, because if there's a solid body of chord changes there, that saxophonist, you know, has to play within that harmonic structure. So if he found that the saxophonist was, you know, particularly inspired, he would walk away from his piano and just let him take his choruses, you know, until he had exhausted that flash of inspiration. There's also some great trio dates. Obviously, this is a quartet date with one or two like solo ballads, but there's some great trio dates. Maybe we'll talk about that another time, because that's actually my favorite stuff of his, is when it's just him, a bassist, and a drummer. Again, because you could really, you know, he really emphasizes that use of time and duration, that use of space, which is so integral to Monk's approach to, you know, the form in general. But anyway, again, I'm home. I got some Indian food, takeout. I got some palak paneer that I'm getting ready to have for dinner, and got some good tobacco, some good tunes, some good food. And my wife's coming home tonight. She was out of town in Boston for a bit, but anyway, I'm picking her up later, and Hope everybody has a good night.